So you just did the worksheet, and hopefully you saw the relationship again between total utility, marginal utility, and you kind of graphed it out a little bit. And so you should have noticed that the total utility, it did increase as you went along, but it kind of starts to mellow out a little bit. Similarly, the marginal utility decreases and kind of starts to mellow out as you go down and you increase the output. So just to kind of get you a couple of definitions here, and I think you hopefully understand this idea that utility is simply a way for us to measure happiness. Measures happiness, or I'll call it satisfaction, right? Happiness, or maybe even usefulness, right? Usefulness, utility, they both start with U. And we measured in utils. Utils is just the unit. It's like a meter telling you how long something is. Well, how much happiness, according to an economist, you're going to measure in utils here. Now, notice the law of diminishing marginal utility. You should have seen this on your chart here. What happened with each unit of output or unit of consumption? What happened? Your marginal utility decreased. And this is because your desirability, like we talked about with the cookies, right? After a certain amount, like, I'm not as interested in it. Even if I really love something, it's not as good to me. I had a delicious chocolate cake the other night, but let me tell you, I had to stop halfway through because it was just too rich. I was like, I love this, and I'll put it in the refrigerator and I'll eat it tomorrow, but I cannot finish it right now. It's making me sick. I'll tell you a story as well. One year I went out to dinner when I was in college. There was a nice restaurant that we could use our meal plans at. I had money left over. I ate so much food that I was literally on the verge of throwing up. The utility of eating, the marginal utility of that last piece of dessert that I ate was incredibly low, I can tell you. And I look back on that and say, man, I probably shouldn't have eaten that. There was no reason to do that. And so as we consume, and if you think of eating, that works pretty well because you get full, you get satisfied, you don't want any more. So I think that's enough about the law of diminishing marginal utility. If you have any questions, you can let me know. You can also sometimes hear a very similar concept. Instead of saying law of diminishing marginal utility, you might hear law of diminishing marginal returns. Like, what do you get back from producing or consuming an extra unit of output? Very similar concept that we will talk about actually in the next section here. Now, let's see. So, these 2 questions on your slides. What happens each time you consume an additional cookie? What happened to each person when they were up front eating the cookies? Their marginal utility fell each time. What keeps us from eating a lot of cookies when we're in the cafeteria? Hopefully we're understanding this idea that the law of diminishing marginal utility, that there's just not a lot of satisfaction that comes from eating 100 cookies. It's just, the first one delicious, 100 not so. Now, I think on your paper, and I don't have it on this slide here, ask us, how do we maximize total utility? Because we want to have lots and lots of utility. We want to get the most satisfaction out of our consumption, the things that we purchase. So I'm going to, in the next video, show you a couple of rules. So hopefully you're with me. If you have any questions about marginal utility or this idea of the law of diminishing marginal utility, or any of the math here, let me know. But we're going to talk about how we maximize it. Because think of some of the things that constrain us from getting more utility. Well, if we're talking about cookies, like, most of the time Mr. Sutton's not just giving them out, right? If you want a cookie, what do you have to do? You have to pay for it. So that's going to be one of the things that constrains us. And I will show you in the next video how we do this. It's not too difficult, but you do have to make sure you follow the process.